That's a familiar tune to many of you. Those of you who don't know it, it's a Brahms Academic Festival Overture, and there are some really nice things for the trumpet in this. A lot of Brahms, if you played the Brahms symphonies, only have a few little trumpet things in them. But here he gives us a beautiful little chorale. And some people believe that this is kind of a fraternity song. That may have been. I'm not a musicologist, so it's something interesting to think about. It sounds very pleasant to me, and it's marked dolce. So I tried to play it that way. Now, one thing you may realize if you're an experienced player and you play this in an orchestra is that oftentimes the conductors would like to hear this on rotary trumpet. And I think that rotary trumpet actually makes this a lot easier to play because you can blend the sound more easily. The sound has a different shape, a different density to it. The piston trumpet has a more focused sound, and the core tends to be firmer than the core in the rotary trumpet. And also, interestingly, the sound of the rotary trumpet can change, the color can change quite a great deal when you're changing from piano to forte, which is what's happening here. But I realize most of you don't have a rotary trumpet, probably, and I don't have one anymore either, although I wouldn't mind it if somebody gave me a really good one. But I don't play it very much anymore. So, but for something like this, I wish I had one so I could pick it up and play it. Now, what are the issues on this? Well, it's very simple. So if I've shown you this before, but this is one of the things I like to do. I play the shape of the line. So I'll just go ahead and play the shape of the line here. So it's a smooth line, very typical of Brahms, and the most of the interest is in the harmony. So it's very helpful. You can play this along with the recording and get that. Get the sound of, just do some listening, get the sound of the harmonic structure in your ears when you play this. It makes it much easier to play. Now, of course, somebody on the committee, hiding behind the screen as you're playing in an audition, will have a tuner. And it's my experience in one of the BSO auditions that they came back and said, this is in the finals, they said, you're all sharp, so make your adjustments. Which to me meant somebody had a tuner. Now, it's challenging enough to play absolutely in tune with a tuner when you are in control and you can see it. But when you're nervous and on stage, playing in an unfamiliar hall and with an anonymous with the anonymous board of the Spanish Inquisition behind the screen, it's much more difficult to play in tune. And most of us, when we get nervous, the pitch goes up. In any case, even under the best circumstances, it can be difficult to play this in tune. Now, that's a matter for much deeper discussion, how to play in tune. Boy. But we need to do it. And the first thing you want to keep in mind is you've got to hear it. And hearing the chord structure helps you to play in tune. If you can have somebody playing the chordal background of this on the piano as you're playing it, I think it would be quite easy for you to play it in tune. If you did a brass quintet arrangement of it, it would be easy. If you played this with a couple of your buddies on the second and third trumpet parts, it would be easier because you'd be tuning naturally to each other as you're listening. Hopefully, you would be. But let's just think about what some of the problems are. Everybody's going to be listening to it. They're going to hear if it's out of tune. That can be kind of stressful. But if you can hear when it's in tune, you're focusing on simply leading the line I just played through the middle of those notes. You're hearing the next note that you're going to play. So the very first one, that first interval is a big interval. Most people anticipate playing the upper note. So they go da, da, and they get tight to play the upper note. You have to practice staying open. So do work with your tuner, but also listen to the sound. there is a very sweet spot, and it's on most trumpets, most modern trumpets, it's pretty narrow. Depends on the horn. This is another thing that makes rotaries easier to play, is the pitch is more malleable, and it's not so obvious when you're slightly out of tune. With a piston trumpet, especially a really good one, you can hear the core of the sound. So listen for that. That's a terrific thing to do. Hear when the sound releases and kind of lights up, and you hear all the overtones in it, and follow that. And don't worry about the tuner for a minute. Then when you find that sweet sound and can carry it through all the intervals, make necessary adjustments to find the path and play that line so it goes right through the center of each of those notes where they vibrate the easiest. Now, many of you know this. This is kind of standard practice. But doing it is challenging because on a C trumpet, and some of you may be wondering, based on the comments I'm getting on these videos, you may be wondering why I'm not playing E with 1 and 2. And the reason is because I like the way it sounds better open than with 1 and 2. And it's not difficult for me to play it open. The D, which what's the other option? You can play it with 1 and 3. That's really probably not going to sound good. So you see how detailed this gets. Start with just playing the natural fingerings. I may be wrong about this, but generally speaking, I think that Mr. Voisin, who was former principal trumpet of the BSO, and also Mr. Gatala, another former principal trumpet of the BSO, generally have their students try to play in tune without using alternate fingerings. Now, that's another argument. We won't go there today, but that's where I like to start. If you need to use an alternate fingering, you want to be listening for that sound. So what makes it so difficult is the E and the D are generally out of tune. Another thing, which many of you know, when you do an octave shift into the upper register, and on a C trumpet, when you go above the staff, you're kind of crossed into that different zone. Most players, when they go for the G, the upper G, da dee, and they're going to be pushing up on that note. So somehow you have to figure out how to get comfortable letting it settle down into pitch. Now that takes some work. You can learn a lot from it. Check the mouthpiece pressure. Check especially how relaxed your throat and your tongue are. Check your support. Are you actually providing enough flow in the air to support the tone, or are you squeezing the tone and pushing it? That's what most trumpet players have trouble with, and all of us have trouble with that to some degree or another in the upper register. So these are simple things, but when you're playing, dee da 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 dee da dee da, right in that range, the first thing is listen for the pitch. No, the first thing is listen for the beauty in the sound and maintain it, and then try and play in tune. Now, of course, you have to be able to hear it to play it, so go do some work. Work on your interval recognition. I'll see you next time. I hope you have a good time practicing. Catch you later. Bye-bye.